A jury in Delaware has convicted Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, of lying about his illegal drug use to buy a gun. This is the first time in U.S. history that a child of a sitting president has been convicted in federal court. Hunter Biden left the courtroom shortly after the verdict, holding hands with his wife and the First Lady, Jill Biden. The case stems from a gun purchase the 54-year-old made 4 years ago when he was accused of lying about his drug use on a federal form. He's admitted he was addicted to cocaine at the time of the purchase. Journalist Benji Heyer is in Washington with the latest on this story. So Benji, take us through the reaction that you've been seeing after this verdict earlier today.
Travis, this is an unprecedented development, another one in American justice and American politics. Legal wrangling hanging over this tightly fought race for the White House. Just weeks ago, former President Donald Trump was criminally convicted. Now Hunter Biden faces a potential sentence of 25 years behind bars. The likelihood of that, though, is low. I have here the jury verdict. It reads guilty on all counts for buying and possessing a firearm whilst addicted to an illegal substance. This is a judgment that will weigh heavily on Joe Biden as he vies for the Oval Office again. And right before giving a major address on, ironically, gun safety, he issued a statement in which he said he loves and is proud of his son. He pointed to how Hunter came out the other side of his battle with addiction. The statement reads, "I will accept the outcome of this case and will continue to respect the judicial process as Hunter considers an appeal." It is within the president's purview to issue a pardon, but he's confirmed he won't be using that power for Hunter, who is his only surviving son. The thing is, this conviction is not only about the actions of one man. Despite jurors insisting that no politics came into play, this has major political consequences. There is the possibility that it's used by Republicans to target Joe Biden's re-election bid. It also provides perhaps the strongest indications yet that the system, the judicial system, isn't rigged against Donald Trump, as he has so often claimed.
What would Republicans point to as a two-tiered system of justice when the president's son was just convicted of a crime? I mean, if anything, this shows the difference that Democrats are willing to accept when our justice system works as functioned and as designed. We're not here contesting the results. We're not here trying to defund the FBI or the Department of Justice because we don't like the outcome of a given trial.
So Benji, okay, what is next now then for Hunter Biden?
Well, this is not the end of Hunter Biden's legal woes. He, of course, awaits a sentencing in coming months. His legal team say they will vigorously pursue all the legal challenges available, but the prosecution insists nobody is above the law.
This case was about the illegal choices defendant made while in the throes of addiction, his choice to lie on a government form when he bought a gun, and the choice to then possess that gun. It was these choices and the combination of guns and drugs that made his conduct dangerous. No one in this country is above the law. Everyone must be accountable for their actions, even this defendant.
Hunter Biden also remains in the crosshairs of high-ranking Republican Party lawmakers on Capitol Hill. They are investigating his business dealings. Then he faces another trial in September on tax charges. He's already pleaded guilty, not guilty, I should say, to allegedly failing to pay $1.4 million in federal income taxes. If convicted there, he could face 17 additional years in prison. This is, though, as I mentioned before, likely to be pounced upon as a tool by the Republicans in this upcoming presidential campaign. Donald Trump has put out a statement of his own, his campaign, saying Biden's family is, quote, a criminal empire, which he says will come to an end when Americans head to the polls on November 5th of this year.
All right, Benji, thanks for this. That is journalist Benji Heyer in Washington. My next guest is Cheryl Bader. She is a former U.S. federal prosecutor and associate professor at the Fordham School of Law. She joins me tonight from New York. So, Cheryl, thanks for being here. I'd love to get your reaction to this news. Are you surprised by this verdict?
So I'm not particularly surprised. I think the jurors here were on the same page of accepting the prosecutor's framing of this as a straightforward case where this is a man who was lying about his addiction to purchase guns. And the defense was hoping that the jury would take a little bit more of a nuanced approach here and understand that with addiction, it's not a straight path to recovery, that there's one step forward, two steps back, that at the time he had checked out of rehab, that he thought that he was on a sober path. And they were hoping that there would be, I think, a little more compassion and understanding for, what it is when someone is struggling with addiction.
Under federal sentencing guideline recommendations, Hunter Biden could be sentenced to over a year in prison. What is the likelihood that he could face jail time for these charges?
So it's very hard to know. Of course, the sentencing guidelines are discretionary. They're guidelines for the judge. And this is a first-time offender. He's a family man who's gotten his life together, become sober. And so I think it would be unlikely. I tell my students when they're thinking about sentencing, there are 4 principles that we think about. One is incapacitation, to keep someone dangerous off the street, doesn't seem to apply here. Rehabilitation, he's already had rehabilitation, and prison is not a very rehabilitative place anyway. Deterrence, and again, when you're talking about addiction, and are we trying to deter him? Are we trying to deter other addicts? And then just pure retribution, which is, imposing pain on someone because we think that's just desserts. And is that what we want to do? Do we want to lock him behind bars in order to give more pain to him and to a family that's experienced so much pain here? So I would think the judge wouldn't, but of course I'm not in the judge's shoes.
Do you think politics played into this trial? If Hunter Biden was not the president's son, do you think this prosecution would have gone any differently?
So it's so hard to know what is motivating a particular prosecutor in a case. Originally, there was a plea deal, and it would have deferred prosecution in this case, and he would plead guilty to the tax evasion that also occurred while he was addicted. And the judge undermined that plea agreement because she felt that the two parties had not come to the same understanding of what the plea deal covered. And so I think that would have been the way it would have been handled. Remember, these forms, right, if people are filling out these forms to get guns, no one's checking off that they're addicted to drugs. Are we checking up to see? We don't do drug testing for people that have firearms. I live in a very gun-loving country, and we don't actually require people to show that they're not addicted to drugs. And yet, in this case, because we have a sitting president's son and a memoir that he wrote about his addiction, even though this gun was never used in any criminal case, he had it for about 2 weeks, yet he's being prosecuted. But that's not to say that the prosecutor who was given this case didn't look at the case and say, look, I have a strong case here, and I'm going to move forward with it.
Let me ask you about this, Cheryl. People are comparing this verdict to Trump's conviction. We just heard from AOC there arguing that it's proof that the justice system is not out for political persecution. How do you think people should be comparing these two trials, if at all?
Look, there are different cases, with different defendants, and I understand the comparison because, the former president running for president and the son of a president. But I think it does show, or at least I think it takes the wind out of Trump's argument that the justice system is weaponized against him to persecute him, right? I mean, here it shows that, in contrast, right, President Biden, who it's clearly is so pained by what's happened to his son, is saying, like, I will not undermine the justice system. I accept this verdict. I love my son, but I also, accept what has happened to him. And I think that juxtaposition says quite a bit.
Cheryl, appreciate your time and your expertise on this tonight. That was Cheryl Bader. She is a former U.S. federal prosecutor and associate professor at the Fordham School of Law, joining us from New York.